It's a fine thing to have ability, but the ability to discover ability in others is the true test. Boy, there's something that should be on every manager's wall. And I did spend 10 years of my life, as you heard, flying supersonic fighters. And the airplane I flew was a big fighter. It was 70 feet long, 22 and a half tons, flew at a little over 1,200 miles an hour, developed 79,000 horsepower. What's 79,000 horsepower? 3 times the total horsepower in the Indianapolis 500, or another way of looking at it, 273 Porsche 911s. It would go from sea level to 35,000 feet in 1 minute and 32 seconds, so it climbed almost straight up for 7 miles. It took me 10 years to figure out that the Air Force wasn't going to use any of those wonderful suggestions that I'd made to them on how they could really improve their organization. So I thought, boy, I'm going to shape up the Air Force, and I sent in my resignation knowing that would really do the trick. And they signed it. And I was a civilian overnight trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So I headed out for the West Coast to fly with the airlines, knowing they'd be ecstatic to get a hold of the hottest thing in the skies. Wrong. They loved me as long as I was talking to them on the phone. They said, my gosh, 2,400 hours of high-performance fighter time, test pilot, air show pilot, never had an accident? I said, that's it. They said, man, you're the kind of guy we're looking for. We're gonna mail you an application. Well, I'd already found out that I had a problem as far as the airlines were concerned, and perhaps some of you have already figured out what that problem is. I said, before you waste a stamp, what are the height requirements for flying with your airline? And they said, 5 feet 8. I said, what a coincidence. That happens to be my goal. A goal I'm obviously still working on, and they wouldn't hire me. I was going to form an anti-discrimination group. I was going to call it SPOT, which stood for Short People on Top. And I've got applications for several of you I've already spotted here today because I look for you all in crowds. I tried my best to convince them I wasn't short. I just wound tight. But they said, no way, you are not flying with this airline. Well, you heard I was known throughout the Air Force as the sonic boom salesman because it had been my job not only to knock off way more than my share of plaster, break out way more than my share of windows, but then after that, I got to go out and explain to these upset, hostile civilian audiences why these sonic booms were good for them. You may think that you have sold a product somewhere in the past with a high objection factor to it. Try one of those sometime. So I joined this big sales company. Sold for a year. At the end of the year, the company came to me and said, you got a year of selling under your belt. We'd now like for you to be a manager of one of our offices. I said, starting when? They said, this afternoon. So they put me through their entire management training course while I was standing there. And, maybe some of you have been through similar management training courses. Went out there for the next year. I sat in that manager's office behind the manager's desk. And in case there was any doubt, wearing a name tag that said Danny Cox, manager. Obviously, I was the manager. Had no idea what I was doing, but obviously I was the manager. Why they made this next move, I can't tell you. But the company came to me one more time, said, you now have a year of selling, you got a year of management. We now want you to take over the top office out of our 36-office chain. I said, how quickly? You folks notice leadership talent. I still didn't know what I was doing, but I thought they must know. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making such a stupid move as this. Well, I could hardly wait to get back to that top office because that's also where I'd been a brand new salesperson the first year out of the Air Force. You cannot even begin to imagine how those top people in that number one office who remembered me as the brand new guy from the year before, the rookie from right out of the Air Force, now welcome me back as their boss. Maybe you could imagine. They hated me with a passion. I kept saying to them, don't think of me as the boss, just think of me as a friend who's always right. I made the mistake that about 99.9% of managers make. My goal was to turn everybody that worked for me into a copy of me for 2 very common reasons. Number one, I thought, isn't that what the company wants? Don't they want everybody out here running around saying the same things, doing the same things, preferably about 5 feet 4 1/4 inches taller or shorter? Otherwise, they'd put in a different head clone. So obviously, I've got the company's blessings to turn everybody into little Danny Coxes. Now, that's the small reason of the two common reasons. The next one is the big one. If I could get them to do that job like I used to do that job, they would never bring me a problem that I'd not already survived. Therefore, I would never be embarrassed with an unsolvable problem, and I would no doubt continue to be promoted up through that big company. Wasn't that a wonderful plan? You can imagine how well it worked. I took that office from first place. You're ahead of me. To 36th out of 36 offices in 3 months' time. Totally wiped that son of a gun out. About this time, my boss showed up at my doorway with a terse little message he delivered through tight lips because it had been his brilliant idea to make me the manager of that office. He said, I certainly made a mistake by making you a manager, and I feel it only fair to let you know I'm now looking for your replacement. I said, now right there is not only the shortest, but the finest motivational seminar I've ever attended. I'm going to have to learn how to do this. He said, my boy, you don't have much time. I said, well, you have no idea how motivated I am. So I went to work on me, not them. Did you catch that? I went to work on me, not them. I was about to go from a very technically oriented background to a very people-oriented background because I had to. I learned some lessons. You don't have to worry about the bottom line. If all the lines above the bottom line are right, they had not been right, and I'd only been focusing on the bottom line. But this was probably the biggest truth that came out of all that, and here it is, and it's got universal application. Salespeople and employees get better right after the manager does. That's got universal application. Kids get better right after parents do. Students get better right after teachers do. Audiences get better right after speakers do. Customers get better right after salespeople, sales managers, employees of the company, receptionists, secretaries, middle management, upper management, or anybody else that's under the company banner gets better. That one's far more broader based. Turned out I didn't lose my job. 120 days later, we were back up to number one. We could hardly wait to get to number one so we could all go and ease off after that incredible climb back. If you'd been charting that production from before I took over, the office is up at number one. I took over, bombed out 90 days later, 120 days later, back up to number one. With that attitude, you know what would have happened to that line, production line on that graph? It would have plateaued right back out, and you'd be listening to somebody else here this morning and not me. We started talking about that, me and my salespeople. What is that thing where you get up to, you're doing your job a certain way and you plateau out? That can happen at low productivity, could happen at medium productivity, and yeah, even at high productivity, you have a tendency to plateau out. We chose to call that a self-imposed barrier. Nobody builds it for you, you build it for yourself. I have a definition that I use for that. My definition of a self-imposed barrier is not a wall around your life, just the margin of your life, where you haven't written anything yet. The margin of that tremendous potential. People say to us, come on, you can do your job better than that. What do we tell them? No, I can't. Why not? I've never done my job any better than that. That's not even a good excuse, much less a reason. There is no saturation to education. I thought that ought to be on every manager's wall. That should be across the top of every company newsletter. Good is the enemy of best. Best is the enemy of better. We get good at something, we have a tendency to say, why do I need to get to be best? I'm already good at this. Should we happen to be best at what we do, then the tendency is to say what? Why do I need to get any better? I'm already number one. That's when you need to get better more than any other time. Why? When contentment in the way you're doing your job sets in, progress stops. When I was in the cockpit of a fighter, wanted to point something out dead ahead, it said it's up here at my 12 o'clock position. Over here, 3 o'clock. Over there, 9 o'clock. What was the clock position back behind me? The one that's hard to see and also where you're most vulnerable in a tactical situation. What clock position's that? 6. We'd see one of our buddies there in the squadron getting a little too cocky, a little too self-assured for his own good and ours. We had to rely on each other a lot. You know what we told that son of a gun that thought he knew it all? You better check your six. Something's coming up on you fast and you don't even know it. Well, wouldn't that be a pretty good analogy for our business world of today? We got to keep checking our six. I went to each one of my salespeople and I said, I don't want you to worry about breaking anybody else's record. I only want you to worry about breaking your own individual record. Why? I'd seen too many people say, oh, I'm going to go break so-and-so's record, and never would happen. But once I got them focused on their own record, and they started to see daily progress, you can imagine what happened to the energy in the organization. We broke office records. We broke company records. We broke industry records. I get asked a lot, where did you find those great people? Did you go raid your competitor and get all their top people? Nope, just worked with what I had. Oh, I'll bet they were all cut out of the same piece of cloth. I'll bet they were all cut to pattern people. No, they came from every walk of life, like probably the people that work for you. If I said to you, take a pad of paper here today, and they'd take a big pad, write out what you do on a typical day. You could do it. Script out an average day for yourself. It'd take pages and pages of writing. How you do your job, what you say to people, what you say back to them when they say this to you, you could write all that out. But wouldn't that be an interesting exercise to check off what works and what doesn't work? This works, this works, this works, this works. That doesn't work. This works, this works. That doesn't work either. How do you know? I've been testing it out. I've been doing it that way for years. We get in the habit of repeating what we know doesn't work. I learned that every single day we stand at the crossroads of our life. You see, it's a Y in the road. What are up these roads? Over here you got new goals. Over here you got no goals. New goals versus no goals. If you're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning, it's because you have no new goals. Every day is a repeat of the day before. What's your goal today? I'm going to go in and repeat yesterday. How was yesterday? Not too good. Then why do it? Well, it's my wrong. It's my habit in doing my job. We sometimes confuse the habit that we've developed with the job itself. There's still a lot of adventure left within that job. We've just gotten bored with the habit that we have developed in doing or getting by in that job. Habit has a goal. Every day, no matter what you're involved in, habit's saying one thing to you. Stop. Now this is good enough. Now ease off. You're getting by here just fine. Back off. What else do we have over here? Better quality work, better customer service. What do you have over here? Plateauing, followed by stagnation, followed by burnout, in that order. On this road over here, you're making a living. Over here, you're making a life. Over here, you've got problems. Over here, you've got problems. You don't get rid of those. Those are on either road. Just a new set of them over here on the new road, and they're no harder than these over here on the old road that you've come to love. You know, we do that. We come into the office in the morning and say, well, good morning, problems. I'm going to act like I'm going to solve you again today, but don't worry, I won't. And they hang around like old friends. Those are the ones we need to go to work on. Over here, you better have some amusement or you'll go stark raving mad. Over here, work's not work. It is a kick. It is a joy. Over here, you've got something to live on. Over here, you have something to live for. Big difference. Should you ever get into this habit of repeating yesterday, you've got to understand one thing. High point of your life, already behind you. Already experienced it. Already gone. But again, that's what we're here to talk about. When I was failing, knew I was failing, I was going to have to make some changes rather quickly. I like what William James said. He said to change one's life, to change the way you're doing your job, start immediately. Do it flamboyantly. No exceptions. That pretty much says it all, doesn't it? You better believe it. I thought, I'm going to have to learn and learn fast. How can I do that? I couldn't go join some management class and hope that my job was available to me when I graduated. I was going to have to learn faster than that. What I came up with was this idea. I would call people that I would read stories about in the magazines and newspapers. In the business section, they put success stories there all the time. They weren't in my industry. That didn't make any difference. People principles are basically the same. And I'd call them. As soon as I got them on the phone, I'd say, you don't know me. My name's Danny Koch. This is Strawberry Company's #1 office. Took it from #1 to 36 in 3 months' time. My boss is out looking for my replacement. I read your success story in the newspaper yesterday. I need to have lunch with you soon. They said, what? #1 to 36 in 3 months' time? I said, I did it.